But the divider between the uptown and downtown lanes, usually green with shrubbery, had become one long tangle of barren thorn bushes. The old-fashioned red and green traffic lights burned low and dark as if short on power, and no matter how long one watched, they never changed from red. The shining glass and steel office buildings that had lined the avenue in their Manhattan were grimy shells here, the broad sidewalks before them cluttered with rubbish. Nothing moved anywhere, except far up Park, where another pair of yellow eyes waited at a corner. Those eyes made Nita nervous. "This way," she said. She hurried past a dirty granite facade full of still doors and silent windows. Kit followed close, and Fred with him, both looking worriedly at everything they passed. Nita was doing her best to keep herself calm as they turned the corner onto 47th. "It can't all be as bad as the helicopter," she told herself. "And nothing really bad has happened to us yet. It was just the shock of the—" She jumped back into the shadow of a building, on hearing a clapping sound so loud she felt sure the helicopter's mate was coming for them. Fred and Kit huddled terrified into that shadow too, and it took a few seconds for any of them to find the source of the sound. Not more than 5 or 6 feet from them, a pigeon had landed, a sooty, dark one, cooing and strutting and head bobbing in a perfectly normal fashion. It walked away from them, muttering absently, intent on its own pursuits. Kit poked Nita from behind. Not a warning, a teasing poke. "Getting jumpy, huh?" "Yeah, well, you were the one who said—" The lightning stroke of motion not 6 feet away knocked the merriment right out of them. What had seemed a perfectly ordinary fire hydrant, dull yellow, with rust stains and peeling paint, suddenly cracked open and shot out a long, pale, ropey tongue like a toad's. The pigeon never had a chance. Hit side on, the bird made just one strangled gobbling noise before the tongue was gone again, too fast to follow, and the wide, horizontal mouth it came from was closed again. All that remained to show that anything had happened was a slight bulge under the metallic-looking skin of the fire hydrant. The bulge heaved once and was still. Nita bit her lip. Behind her she could feel Kit start shaking again. "I feel sorry for the next dog that comes along," he said. "I hope you don't mind if I cross the street." Kit headed out of the shadow. "I think I'll join you," Nita said. She backed out of range of that tongue before she started across the street herself. There was no time to move, to scream, even to think. Kit was halfway across the street with his eye on that fire hydrant, his head turned away from the big yellow checker cab that was maybe 6 feet away and leaping straight at him. A flash of brilliance struck Nita like a blow and did the same for the cab, so that it swerved to its left and knocked Kit sideways and down. The cab roared on by, engine racing in frustration, evidently too angry to try for another pass. But something about it, maybe the savage, sidelong look it threw Nita out of its burned-down eyes as it squealed around the corner of 46th and Madison, something made Nita suspect that it would not forget them. She ran out into the street and bent over Kit, not sure whether she should try to move him. "It's all right," Kit said, groaning softly as he worked at getting up. Nita slipped hands under his arms to help. "Fred did it." "Are you all right?" came the frantic thought as Fred appeared in front of Kit's face. "Did I hurt you? Did I emit anything you can't take? I took out all the ultraviolet. Oh, no! I forgot the cosmic rays again." Kit managed a smile, though not much of one. His face was skinned and bruised where one cheekbone had hit the pavement. "Don't worry about it, Fred. That thing would have done a lot worse to me than a few cosmic rays if it had hit me the way it wanted to." He stood up, wincing. "It got my legs some, I think." Nita bent down to look at Kit's left leg and sucked in her breath. His jeans were torn, and he had a straight horizontal gash 6 inches or so below the knee, which was bleeding freely. "Does it feel deep?" "No, it just hurts a lot. I think it was the cab's fender. There was a jagged piece sticking out of the chrome. Listen, Fred, thanks." You're sure I didn't hurt you? You people are so fragile. A little gamma radiation will ruin your whole day, it seems. I'm fine, but I've got to do something about this leg. And then we've got to get moving again and get to the dark book. Nita looked over at the fire hydrant, fear boiling in her. Casually, as if this was something it did many times a day, the hydrant cracked open and spat something out onto the sidewalk, a desiccated-looking little lump of bones and feathers. Then it got up and waddled heavily down to a spot about 50 feet farther down the block and sat down again. And I thought it couldn't all be bad. Together, as quickly as they could, two small, frightened-looking figures and a spark like a lost star hurried into the shadows and vanished there. Entropics, detection and avoidance. How close are we? This is Madison and 49th, 3 blocks north and a long one east. Can we rest? This air burns to breathe, and we've been going fast. Yeah, let's. They crouched together in the shadow of a doorway, 2 wary darknesses and a dim light, watching the traffic that went by. Mostly cabs prowled past, wearing the same hungry look as the one that had wounded Kit. Or a sullen truck might lumber by, or a passenger car, looking uneasy and dingy and bitter. None of the cars or trucks had drivers, or looked like they wanted them. They ignored the traffic lights, and their engines growled. Nita's eyes burned in the dark air. She rubbed them and glanced down at Kit's leg, bound now with a torn-off piece of her shirt. How is it? Not too bad. It feels stiff. I guess it stopped bleeding. He looked down, felt the makeshift bandage, winced. Yeah, I'm hungry. Nita's stomach turned over. She was too nervous to even consider eating, as Kit came up with a ham sandwich and offered her half. You go ahead, she said. She leaned against the hard, cold wall, and on a sudden thought pulled her pen out of her pocket and looked at it. It seemed all right, but as she held it, she could feel a sort of odd tingling in its metal that hadn't been there before. Fred? He hung beside her at eye level, making worried feelings that matched the dimness of his light. Are you sure that light didn't hurt you? Yeah, it's not that. She held out the pen to him. Fred backed away a little, as if afraid he might swallow it again. Is this radioactive or anything? Nita said. He drifted close to it, bobbed up and down to look at it from several angles. You mean beta and gamma and those other emissions you have trouble with? No. Nita still felt suspicious about the pen. She dug into her backpack for a piece of scrap paper, laid it on her wizard's manual, clicked the point out, and scribbled on the paper. Then she breathed out, perplexed. Come on, Fred, look at that. He floated down to look. The pen's blue-black ink would normally have been hard to see in that dimness, no matter how white the paper. But the scrawl had a subtle glimmer about it, a luminosity just bright enough to make out. I don't think it's anything harmful to you, Fred said. Are you sure it didn't do that before? Yes. Well, look at it this way. Now you can see what you're writing when it's dark. Surprising you people hadn't come up with something like that already. Nita shook her head, put the paper away, and clipped the pen back in her pocket. Kit, finishing the first half of his sandwich, looked over at the scribble with interest. Comes of being inside Fred, I guess. With him having his own claudication and all the energy boiling around inside him, you might have expected something like that to happen. Yeah, well, I don't like it. The pen was fine the way it was. Considering where it's been, Kit said, you're lucky to get it back in the same shape, instead of crushed into a little lump. He wrapped up the other half of his sandwich and shoved it into his backpack. Should we go? Yeah. They got up, checked their surroundings as usual to make sure that no cabs or cars were anywhere close, and started up Madison again, ducking into doorways or between buildings whenever they saw or heard traffic coming. No people, Kit said, as if trying to work it out. Just things, all dark and ruined, and machines, all twisted. Alive, but they seem to hate everything. And pigeons. Dogs, too, Nita said. Where? Kit looked hurriedly around him. Check the sidewalk and the gutter. They're here. And remember that nest. Nita shrugged uneasily, setting her pack higher. I don't know. Maybe people just can't live here. We're here, Kit said unhappily. And maybe not for long. A sudden grinding sound like tortured metal made them dive for another shadowy doorway close to the corner of Madison and 50th. No traffic was in sight. Nothing showed but the glowering eye of the traffic light and the unchanging "Don't Walk" signs. The grinding sound came again, metal scraping on concrete, somewhere across Madison, down 50th, to their left. Kit edged a bit forward in the doorway. What are you... I want to see. He reached around behind him, taking the antenna in hand. But if that's something that might chase us later, I at least want to look at it. Fred, take a peek for us? Right. Fred sailed ahead of them, keeping low and close to the building walls, his light dimmed to the faintest glimmer. By the lamppost at Madison and 50th, he paused, then shot low across the street and down 50th between Madison and 5th, vanishing past the corner. Nita and Kit waited, sweating. From around the corner, Fred radiated feelings of uncertainty and curiosity. These are like the other things that run these streets, but these aren't moving. Maybe they were dangerous once. I don't know about now. Come on, Kit said. He put his head out of the doorway. It's clear. With utmost caution, they crossed the street and slipped around the corner, flattening to the wall. Here stores and dingy 4-story brownstones with long flights of railed stairs lined the street. Halfway down the block, jagged and bizarre in the dimness and the feeble yellow glow of a flickering sodium vapor streetlight, was the remains of an accident. One car, a heavy 2-door sedan, lay crumpled against the pole of another nearby streetlight, its right-hand door ripped away and the whole right side of it laid open. A little distance away, in the middle of the street, lay the car that had hit the sedan, resting on its back and skewed right around so that its front end was pointed at Kit and Nita. It was a sports car of some kind, so dark a brown that it was almost black. Its windshield had been cracked when it overturned, and it had many other dents and scrapes, some quite deep. From its front right wheel well jutted a long, jagged strip of chrome, part of the other car's fender, now wound into the sports car's wheel. I don't get it, Nita said silently. If the dark one hit the other, why isn't its front all smashed in? She broke off, as with a terrible metallic groan, the sports car suddenly rocked back and forth, like a turtle on its back trying to right itself. Kit sucked in a long breath and didn't move. The car stopped rocking for a moment, then with another scrape of metal started again, rocking more energetically this time. Each time the side-to-side motion became larger. It rocked partway onto one door, then back the other way and partway onto the other, then back again, and full onto its left-hand door. There it balanced, precarious for a few long seconds as if getting its breath, and then it twitched hard, shuddered all the way over, and fell right side down. The scream that filled the air as the sports car came down on the fender-tangled right wheel was terrible to hear. Instantly it hunched up the fouled wheel, holding it away from the street, crouching on the 3 good wheels, and shaking with its effort. Nita thought of an old sculpture she had seen once, a wounded lion favoring one forelimb, weary and in pain, but still dangerous. Very slowly, as if approaching a hurt animal and not wanting to alarm it, Kit stepped away from the building and walked out into the street. "Kit!" "Shh," he said silently. "Don't freak it." "Are you out of your—" "Shh." The sports car watched Kit come, not moving. Now that it was right side up, Nita could get a better idea of its shape. It was actually rather beautiful in its deadly-looking way.